Hello, everybody. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC. My name is Aaron Christensen, and tonight we're going to be talking about one of the most popular films of all time, Jurassic Park, celebrating its 30th anniversary. When Michael Crichton's novel Jurassic Park first debuted in 1990, it read on the page like the greatest Steven Spielberg movie that had never been made. And shortly afterwards, it was announced that Steven Spielberg would, in fact, be helming the 1993 screen adaptation. And when it debuted on June 13th, it was an instant smash hit worldwide. It was the highest grossing film in history up to that point, and basically defined summertime tentpole event moving forward. It replaced Spielberg's own E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial from 1982. Tonight, 30 years later, we're going to discuss the original film as well as its five sequels, as well as its enduring place in popular culture. My guests tonight are, My guests tonight are Chicago's own Chris Hainsworth and Katie McLean Hainsworth, and beaming in from St. Louis, part-time paleontologist and full-time dinosaur fan, Eli LaChance. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I am super psyched to talk about Jurassic Park 1993, as well as all the other films in the Jurassic universe, such as it is. I would like to just kind of like bounce around and kind of talk about people's first experience seeing Jurassic Park. I assume we're all of an age where we saw it that summer of 93. Let's start off with Katie. Katie, what was your experience seeing Jurassic Park for the first time?
Before I answer that, Aaron, I have one question for you real quick. What did we do to hurt you that you made us watch the 5 movies that were made after the good one in 1993? Because my God,
this is kind of my scheme, actually, is that if I haven't seen the movies, I just Trojan horse people in. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to talk about Jurassic Park and the other 5 movies. However, I think we'll have a lively discussion because I don't hate on the other 5 nearly as much as perhaps some of the others on our panel will. So anyway, yes, right. Carry on.
I saw it when it first came out multiple times, but I don't think that I will ever forget the first time I saw it in the theater, which was in June 1993. I had just graduated from college. I was home with my high school friends. We saw movies all the time, and this was just like, no way are we not going to the dinosaur movie, and we did. And I was completely carried away by this in every respect. When I cried, I laughed, I screamed. I remember sitting with my friend Brian Satterley. I sat next to him, and the look on his face during the last sequence in when they're running around the visitor center trying to get away from the velociraptors, and we looked at each other, and he just said, he's going to kill those kids. Like, he is going to kill those kids. Like, they made it through the tour ride, and now he's going to kill them here. Like, we had come to think of Spielberg as the ET guy, you know. Right. So no way were any kids actually in danger. And so that was, I mean, we left and it was like, when can we see it again? Let's just go back right now.
Chris?
Summer of 93, I was doing the Illinois Shakespeare Festival down in Normal, Illinois. And I think by then we were open, but I think I went on like a Monday, which is our day off. And the second I found out that anybody else that summer hadn't seen it, I was like, oh, well, do you want to go tomorrow? We can go tomorrow. We can go see it tomorrow, right? And so I probably saw it about 5 times in the theaters that summer alone. So, but yeah, it was big. I'm trying to remember if I had actually read the book first before I had seen the movie. Because I think they were very close to each other. I don't know if it was one and then the other, but because, yeah, the timeline messes itself up. But yeah, I definitely saw it about 5 times in the theater in a space of 3 months.
Nice.
I saw the movie before reading the book. Pretty sure.
Eli?
I definitely saw the movie before reading the book because I saw the movie in 1993 when I was 3 years old. It is the first movie I ever remember wanting to see. Like, my dad liked to watch Entertainment Tonight, and I just remember that that shot of the foot stepping into the mud, and like
Mhm.
I just was like, I want to see that. I told my dad I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was like 3 years old, and he had to look it up to find out what it meant. And so it's just always been a thing that was with me. And so, yeah, my dad was afraid to take me because he'd heard it was kind of a horror movie, and it's absolutely a horror movie, even though both horror movie lovers and haters get kind of mad about that distinction. But he got screener passes and was like, well, if he gets scared, we can just leave. So they took a 3-year-old to see Jurassic Park, which is really weird to me because I think I was a weird kid because I've since been around many kids and I wouldn't take a 3-year-old to see anything. Like they're frustrating. They don't just chill and watch the movie, but I did. And I was like, whoa, just like it blew my mind. It didn't scare me at all.
I similar to everybody else, I also saw it that summer, and I remember I was dating somebody who got sneak preview passes to the night before opening night. And I was like, I cannot believe you're going to go and see this before me. But she did, and she crawled into bed and she's like going, it's amazing. And then fell asleep. And I was like, I hate you. But it absolutely lived up to expectations. I remember during the initial T-Rex attack, I was gripping the armrests so hard that like I thought I was going to break something. And I had the actual thought go through my head. I'm like, I don't know if I can take this. Like I thought something might break in me.
It was so scary.
It was amazing. And it's amazing to think that because we kind of had come to expect awesomeness from Steven Spielberg, but he was in a little bit of a slump at that point. Like he hadn't blown the doors off in a while. I feel like Indiana Jones and Last Crusade was perhaps like the big kind of like adventure. He'd had Hook, I think, between that and this. So
they were actually.
Go ahead.
No, they were actually building the animatronics while he was working on Hook. Like he was yeah.
He was not. He'd proven himself not infallible at that point. And then, of course, the idea that that this and Schindler's List both came out in 1993 is kind of like, okay, here, just have the keys to everything, Steven.
Yeah, I'm going to release the highest grossing picture of all time in the same year that I'm going to release the thing that's going to sweep the Academy Awards. Yeah. And they're not going to be the same thing.
Nope, they're completely different.
Yeah, everyone else can eat it.
I did read I remember reading the book in the summer of 92, and I think there was already buzz, like that the films were being shot. But I remember just reading going, okay, this could be something special. And turns out it was. And even though I think, as to be expected, it lacks some of the texture from the book as in translation to the film, I think it does a really nice job of beefing up some of the characters. Like in the book,
he switches the kids.
The female, the female in the movie is just annoying, and she's useless, and just and the kid, the boy has all the answers. He's the computer genius. Like he's one that knows stuff about dinosaurs. And I'm just kind of like, the sister is just there to be an annoying little sister.
Yeah, I think they do a great job with the adaptation. It's such a great example. If you were to teach a class in adaptation, it's a really good example of how to make something cinematic that is inherently internal or not very interesting in a book. I used to compare it to The Firm, which has a climactic ending of photocopying, which they did in the movie, and which is very boring and a very horrible ending to that movie. But like the moment of the moment of figuring out that the animals are breeding in the book, which is a sort of complex system of telling the computer what to look for, ends up just being Alan Grant finding eggs in a nest and saying the animals are breeding, and it's a lovely moment, and it's a great little snippet of adaptation of how you do something efficiently and quickly and make it a character moment.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the reasons why the first movie is so strong, is that it has source material that they can pick and choose from and refine. So there was like this, giant text to choose from that so the adaptation choices were choices. that it's felt like, well, how are we going to make this is the information we have to convey? How are we going to do that cinematically? Which I think lends a certain amount of strength to the first movie. I mean, when I was watching it this time, I had lots of questions that you only get when you like watch it with a critical eye. But I was still like, really? Some guy's got to get up on top of the raptor cage to open the door. There's nothing.
Yeah, no, that was.
They don't have OSHA out there.
I'm
That's
like,
the only way we can do this.
Yeah, I'm like, who lost the toss? I quit. If I lose the toss, I quit and I go home. I keep going until I lose the coin toss.
I think part of that is that Michael Crichton had a hand in the screenplay for the original, and Michael Crichton had written both. It's kind of like William Goldman. He'd written novels and he'd written screenplays, and he'd also directed. So he had.
He'd also written this movie before with Westworld.
Yeah, well, he also wrote a dinosaur movie about a clone dinosaur, and it didn't do it for him. So he shelved it. And a big part of this story was he was trying to figure out like a justification for spending all this money to bring dinosaurs back, and that's how he walked his way back to Westworld. But
that's fascinating.
I think the film is far less cynical than the novels, and that's part of what makes the film stand out, is because Steven Spielberg is the kind of filmmaker who understands what children identify with, and children do relate to dinosaurs a lot. And so he essentially was making this really scary big budget horror movie, but he was making it for children. And then you see like a lot of the themes in the movie are completely different. Like there's this big story about fatherhood. Well, in the novel, Grant loved kids. In the film, he hates them, and he slowly learns to love them. And then you can break it up into pieces. Like, I'll get really weird with it if we go long enough. So maybe there's a time for that later. But like as an adaptation, it's really interesting because it tells the exact same story, but it has completely different messages. And I think that's awesome.
Particularly the Hammond character. Like in the book, he's mustache twirling, evil, so my grandkids die, whatever, kind of. And then of course it's odd that like he meets that fate in the book that he escapes in the movie, because he's, the movie lets him off because he's enthusiastic and well-meaning versus, money at any costs.
Yeah, he's a capitalist in the book, and he's an idealistic artist in the film. And you can see something similar with Gennaro. He lives and he's very athletic, and then in the movie they turn him into this kind of Weasley guy who's like, willing to abandon the children, and he gets himself eaten in like the best death scene in a movie ever, probably.
Yeah, Katie and I were talking about that while we were watching it, and I was like, maybe Hammond is sympathetic because Spielberg is sympathetic to that type of character.
Yeah.
That's it. It was Spielberg who did that. He wanted that. And there's a couple different readings of the movie, and one is that there's two that are directly about the film industry, and one is it's just Spielberg kind of thinking about what this thing he's created, which is blockbuster filmmaking, is and what it's doing to art. And there's another where the film serves as sort of catharsis for him being the producer on the Twilight Zone movie. I don't know if you guys know about the two children who are killed on set. And so that he's reframed the entire movie around a man trying to save two children. And all the bureaucracy and cost cutting is what's getting in the way and putting them in harm's way. And I think all three of those kind of readings, the one about parenthood, the one about the Twilight Zone, the greater commentary on the film industry in general, I think they all work, and I think they're all possibly deliberately there. But Crichton didn't want to write the screenplay, and he only did it because they gave him $500,000, and he was like, "I'll give you one draft, and that's it. But I'm done with this. Like, I just want to sell it and be done." So yeah.
So it sounds like David Koepp had the other, was the other writing credit, and it sounds like Spielberg had kind of a strong hand in it as well, even though he goes uncredited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of everything he works on to a certain, well, with the exception of the movie that immediately follows this one. I think that's true of a lot of, because going back to Poltergeist, there's all of that talk about who was where and who contributed what and all of those things. So, he is normally a very conscientious, detail-oriented director. And, you know, the things that they did in this movie, like I've watched we have like the little 2 film version DVD that came out 25, however long ago. And like all the extra features about like how, because they were like, much like Cameron and T2 and The Abyss, they were really pushing the envelope on computer generated imagery to like, and quite frankly, it's better than it's being used now to a certain degree. I mean, there are movies that use it well, and there are just movies that just use it, but I think the choices they made in how they wanted the dinosaurs to look, and that first iconic moment when with Sam Neill and the glasses and turning Laura Dern's head and seeing the dinosaur, they did a great job because everybody in the movie theater felt the same way as they did.
Can we talk really quick to the cast? Because I think part of the reason why the film works as well as it does is that we have actors and characters that we can really invest in. And then I do want to touch briefly on our tech wizards, Dennis Murin and Phil Tippett, et cetera. But let's talk really quick about our main characters: Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill; Ian Malcolm by Jeff Goldblum; and Ellie Sadler, played by Laura Dern. So Sam Neill, I think, is and he wasn't a huge star at this point. I feel like he was the right person for the job because he was grounded and likable and just crusty enough that you're like, okay, I could see how this guy would go hide himself off and dig up bones rather than hang out with people.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Sam Neill, who I think is absolutely brilliant, but at that point, I was still like, Omen 3 guy?
Damien, really?
Damien's going to Jurassic Park? But that's I mean, I think the last thing he did before this came out was the antagonist of Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Oh gosh.
So
when was Dead Calm?
That was 80s, 87, 88.
That movie really sets him up well for this role. The quiet hero willing to go far.
Eli?
I was reading before we started. I was reading the big making of Jurassic Park book from 1993, and in it, Steven Spielberg was talking about the people he wanted to cast, and on the list was Richard Dreyfuss and Kurt Russell, which aren't not even like two people you would consider to play the same character at all. So like how they landed on Sam Neill when like those were floating in his mind is wild.
Now, has Kurt Russell, okay, quick sidebar, has Kurt Russell done a Steven Spielberg film? Because I feel like his name comes up with, like, because, I mean, obviously Star Wars was Lucas, but it feels like everybody wants to work with him. They just haven't yet.
He's too busy.
That's true. But yeah, Richard Dreyfuss, I mean, obviously there's a long history between those two.
Someone you trust. I can see why that would be a go-to name.
Yeah, but he would have a completely different energy to say.
Yeah, it would be tough with him and Jeff Goldblum. I think.
Who's the more eccentric of the two?
Yeah, who's the talker? I think the balance of the three of them and their sort of natural vibes and energy is part of what makes the film work really well. They all have terrific chemistry together. I think Laura Dern. After watching the other 5 movies, I have a special respect for Laura Dern because the movies are just chock full of underwritten women, and she I think she does something extraordinary. The scene, the flea circus scene where they're eating ice cream, it's just Hammond and Ellie. God, I think that is the worst written scene in the history of cinema. But Laura Dern sells. Can I swear on this show?
You sure can.
She sells the living shit out of that scene, and it took me like 6 viewings to notice that it doesn't make any sense at all what they're saying to each other. But she's so good that you're just like, yeah, you do gotta feel it. You do, Ellie. Yes, like she's our heart into this trio. And
how does she have any responsibility for that power? I don't know, but I buy it. Like she's so like that scene is great. I completely agree. Don't know. I have so many things I want to talk about.
We'll talk. Let's. I'll throw the Ian Malcolm ball to you.
He's just so great.
Oh, Oh, Jeff Goldblum's fantastic. I mean, what else can you say? Like, the guy is iconic. Like, everything he's in, The Fly, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it's really weird to see how he's kind of evolved, because I mean, everyone keeps trashing on the later movies, but if you watch like the most recent movie, he is no longer the same character. He is the eccentric Jeff Goldblum he's built for himself,
Yes.
rather than like this very cynical voice of reason who's going to pop in and say, "Hey, we shouldn't do this." And
they put him in the same clothes, but it's not the same.
And
guy.
he's absolutely the sort of heart of the book. He's the heart of the sequel. Yes. He's sort of like the moral voice through the entire thing, and choosing such a charismatic actor who's got that accent. Like, none of the characters that they cast in these movies up until we get to the fourth one are like what you would expect for a big budget blockbuster. They're not, Stallone. They're not Schwarzenegger. Mm-hmm. They're smaller, build, intellectual. Yeah, they're really good actors. They're not muscles that go on camera for like a murder spree. And I think that's another part of what really makes these movies work.
They're like him. They're like Spielberg.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about Goldblum, like he'd really nailed it with The Fly in '86. But then there was a bit of a, kind of a phase where Hollywood didn't know what to do with that guy. And then Spielberg knew what to do with that guy, because you've got two highly intelligent characters in Seth Brundle and Ian Malcolm, and they are completely not the same person at all. Absolutely. And I was like, and look at, I love watching Ian Malcolm like be sexy, and the fact that he's got like, all of these XYs, and I'm like, that's amazing to me. Like, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, Goldblum is so good that he actually staved off death, as opposed to what happens to Ian Malcolm in the book. I mean, Jeff Goldblum was so good, they would not let him die.
Keep him alive.
In fact, it's a very sort of Elmore Leonard-esque change of like, he was popular in the movie. Oh, well, then he did not die. And in the next book, he is still alive, Because I don't know if you've ever read Out of Sight, but like those characters, several of them die at the end of that book. And yet in the sequel to the book of Out of Sight, they're suddenly alive again because they lived at the end of the movie. It's like, whatever works.
But you at least get reports of his death were greatly exaggerated.
Yeah.
Let's talk really quick about because this, I mean, people can deep dive later off camera because the tech on this one was absolutely groundbreaking. Phil Tippett had come in with his Go Motion, dinosaurs, and then ILM and Dennis Muren went, I think we can do you one better. And Stan Winston, had his live action dinosaurs. It's like, and Phil Tippett, I watched that documentary, and Phil Tippett's like going, I'm out. I'm done. Thank you. I'm extinct. And he got to be like the dinosaur director, but
the dinosaur supervisor. He had one job and he failed.
And who doesn't get heard of as much as Michael Lantieri, as kind of like the guy who pieced it all together, the kind of made it all merry, because Winston's live action dinosaurs and Dennis Muren's CG dinosaurs, they really do live in the same world in a really great way.
Yeah, it reminds me. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it's even watching it 30 years, that movie still, the effects still hold up. Everything because not to go off on too much of a tangent, but watching the Star Wars prequels, nobody knows where to have an eye line. Nobody knows who they're talking to, but none of that is in this movie. Everything has a sense of place and weight and interaction. Yes. So it's really it's to come so hard out of the gate and nail it so well has really set a standard that people should still be trying to meet.
Agreed.
It reminds me of the Two Towers extended edition has a great documentary about the development of Gollum, and about the war between CGI and motion capture, and how that ended up with the brilliant performance / CGI thing that we see today. It feels like the second half of the conversation from Jurassic Park's development.
Eli?
I just assume that Spielberg made some kind of deal with the devil.
To bring back
like,
dinosaurs.
There's no reason that this movie should look as good as it still does. I mean, you could blame Dean Cundy, you could blame our special effects wizards, but these first three, I say, like, all three of them are the best special effects movies ever made. They all look just flawless today, and it doesn't make sense because, like, you watch, Jurassic World, and they look like
takes
cartoons.
A big dip. Yeah, I was shocked by that. It was like, but what happened to the actors we saw in the first three movies?
Right.
Our actor dinosaurs. Why didn't they just get them?
They retired.
Yeah, I guess so.
Part of it is like, and as we spiral out into the other movies to talk about it, everything has a reason to be at Jurassic Park. Like, you have the setup of, like, we have this problem. We need the insurance people to sign off on it, which means we need these three people to come in. And so we're going to open the park to them. They don't know what they're getting into. Nobody says, by the way, there's an island of man-eating dinosaurs. Would you please come? They just get brought to this place. And then, through, once again, corporate greed and espionage, which sets off the chain of events, coupled with natural disaster of hurricane. But everything has a purpose, and everything, I mean, it's a very simple story, the first one. It's like, we're here to do this thing, everything goes off the rails, and now we're just trying to stay alive. And there are nice moments for character stuff, like Sam Neill with the kids in the tree. And I do have to say, I'm not always a fan of kids in movies. Like, just like generally because they are mostly plot devices of like, oh, we need someone to act really shitty right now to put us in a bad position. Let's put a kid in,
See Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah. But I feel like both kids in this are actual kids. And, that they act like kids would.
I really like that you brought up the simplicity of it because, I'm actually not a paleontologist. I guess I'm an amateur paleontologist, but I'm a writer and I'm in an MFA program. And there's this big talk about plot-driven versus character-driven stories, and they kind of denigrate plot-driven. And this is completely plot-driven, but it still has all of those elements that you would want from a great character-driven story. It's really smart. It is not as superficial as just dinosaur eat people. Like, that's not what Spielberg would even. He seems like the kind of filmmaker who couldn't do that if they were like, we'll give you a couple million. And I don't think he did it with the sequel either. I know you guys are going to disagree with me. I think the sequel is just as smart. It's just been unfairly overlooked. But yeah.
Good. Let's talk about the sequel. Let's talk about the sequel.
We haven't finished the first one. Oh my god.
No. Well, we can circle back around, but let's talk a little bit about Lost World Jurassic Park, the sequel that came out in 1997. Look, I've got a banner for it.
Oh,
so yeah, exactly. Speaking of tech,
I have a T-Rex from it.
So my issue with Lost World is that I feel like the characters they don't feel as grounded, they don't feel as real. They feel a bit more like they are there to serve a plot as opposed to the plot being supported by them.
I don't think I agree that Jurassic Park is a totally plot-driven movie, because every character in that movie has something they need. Ellie and Dr. Grant need the money, the site funded for the next 3 years. Ian Malcolm is chasing excitement and chaos, and everybody is there. And once things get going, of course, everybody just wants to survive. But like Dennis Nedry has a whole side thing going on. And it's everything that happens is because people are overconfident or greedy or something else. But in the second movie, people are just stupid. And that's not a character driving force. That's just a huge flaw. And I hate it. I hate it so much. It's such a disappointment because they had all the pieces there. They were great actors in that movie. Richard Schiff is one of the best actors working. And so is Julianne Moore, but you wouldn't know it from that movie. And the best thing I can say about it is it's not as bad as the third movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I have what I call my Tremors Lost World sort of dichotomy of like Tremors, which is a movie I love, has average everyday blue collar citizens who are confronted with this new thing that comes into their environment.
Right.
Like, this is where we lived our whole lives. Suddenly there are these giant underground monsters that are trying to kill us.
Gotta
And
deal with it.
they see what they're doing and they adapt to what they're seeing, right? So it's like, oh, they come up through the ground. Let's get up high. Okay, well, now they're bringing the buildings down. So we got to get on them up. But they think they see something. They change their behavior. They're average, everyday people who are just, none of them are like, oh, well, I'm an underground monster expert. I'm just a guy who plants fence poles for a living, but I am staying alive because I'm seeing what's happening and I'm adapting to my environment. Whereas the Lost World is you have professional hunters and paleontologists and people who study predators going to an island and doing things that I know not to do.
Yeah.
I know, and the thing is, it switches from scene to scene. Of Julianne Moore's like, what are you, an idiot? Dinosaurs can smell for 4 miles. And then she goes to sleep in a tent full of fucking candy wrappers and is like, oh, put them under the blanket. That'll keep it away.
Eli.
All right. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I absolutely love this movie, and everything you guys just said is completely true. So it's important to note that Jurassic Park is widely considered to be like a third wave feminist text. So like the change in the way a feminine hero is portrayed in that movie versus the absolute incompetence of Julianne Moore is very important. The whole idea of Jurassic Park being this commentary on the film industry is very important. Steven Spielberg hated working on Jurassic Park at the end of it because he was doing Schindler's List. He actually had to get George Lucas to help him dub the film because he was working on Schindler's List. And so with The Lost World, you get another sort of commentary on the film industry, and that's all the film is. It's a great horror movie. One, like unlike Jurassic Park, there is no wonder this is unabashedly a horror movie. Like we see a dude ripped in half and his only sin is trying to help his friends. Like it is the most selfless death in the franchise. It is shocking, and it stuck with me when I was a little 7-year-old kid watching it, trying to see if I could see the intestines as they ripped them apart, Lady in the Tramp style. But the important thing to note is, so like the movie starts and it's a child that's attacked this time. Yes. And it's these things are now coming for your children is like the whole idea. And we cut to this like really artificial, like it's Jeff Goldblum in the subway. There's this emphasis on media. Every character in that film exists as a kind of inverse of the character in the other film. Whereas Ellie Sattler is really competent. Sarah Harding is touching baby dinosaurs, wearing
saying that you don't touch anything,
wearing a jacket soaked in blood for after making a big deal about their olfactory senses. She is kidnapping a baby T-Rex. She is the complete opposite of Ellie Sattler, and that's deliberate. The only character that's not the opposite of who the character was in the original is Malcolm. Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, it's Malcolm, and he's still that same like voice of reason, and he's warning you like, hey guys, this is going to go bad. And so what plays out once they get to Sorna is like this sort of exploration and sequel syndrome. Like we get the scene that rips off King Kong, which is our ooh ah moment with the stegosaurs, which was deliberately put in because children kept asking Spielberg why he didn't have stegosaurs, which I think is just adorable. So we get that scene. We have, the sort of T-Rex attacking a vehicle scene, which is the exact same. We have something pushed off a cliff, working our way up to the Velociraptors. It's all an exploration and sequel syndrome. Whereas our tech guy in the last one was selfish and trying to destroy things, our tech guy in this one is selfless, and still gets killed for it. Kelly is hyper athletic, whereas Lex is, she's a geeky computer nerd. Tim's a dinosaur nerd. In Jurassic Park, the little boy's a dinosaur, or in The Lost World, the little boy's a dinosaur. Like And so this whole thing is brought to San Diego, where we get like a pastiche of modern blockbusters. We get a homage to Speed, a homage to Godzilla, which was in production at the time. We get a homage to Indiana Jones, the rolling ball. And then the key, there's two keys here. And one is the T-Rex chases a man into Blockbuster, where they're showing like these sort of infantilized movies, which is like what blockbuster filmmaking is doing to stories. We see Schwarzenegger in King Lear, and the man who is credited as Unlucky Bastard, he is David Cope. He's the screenwriter. He's the screenwriter. So they're coming to your house. They're in your house. The T-Rex is in the backyard. And it's sort of perverting this entire thing. And we get that last shot, which is shot through CNN. There's a great moment. So in the first one, Spielberg is Hammond. In the second one, Spielberg is Malcolm. And there's this moment where it's blink and you'll miss it, where the sort of the bad guys are coming in with all their equipment, and he looks up at them through binoculars. He's looking at the binoculars backwards. And like, once again, as we noted, this is Steven Spielberg. He's a detail-oriented filmmaker. Sure. He is a very competent detail-oriented filmmaker. That is not something that would these aren't things that would accidentally happen. I think the second movie is very smart. I really like this movie.
Okay, go Chris, and then I want to say something.
I was going to say, I think certain movies depend on when you come to them. Like, you saw it when you were 7. I saw it when I was 27. So, I think that influences your experience with the movie. But I know, like, the things that I've heard about this movie is I think Steven Spielberg is normally a very detail-oriented director, but I know he was directing this movie from a continent away. He wasn't on set to direct a lot of this movie. He was directing a lot of this movie through monitors. So that doesn't speak his normal work ethic for this movie. And I think it shows in the script. I find everything you just said completely fascinating and engaging. But I feel like, because I feel the same thing, quite honestly, about Temple of Doom. This feels like a bunch of sequences we couldn't fit into the first one. So we're going to come up with this rough pastiche That's
my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Of course it is.
And it's also an apology for what happened in the Twilight Zone secretly.
Yeah.
But I feel like because there was a book too. In this case, there was also a book first that I read before I saw this. I remember this specifically because I read the book before I saw this movie, and I was like, "Oh, wow, this is not good. Right. This is not good." But then I heard, "Don't worry, we're going to completely throw that book out and do our own thing with it." And I was like, "Well, great." And then they did that, and I was like, "What happened?"
You mean you didn't like the escape room sequence of trying to find Richard Levine?
So here's and I agree, Eli. I love all of the stuff, that the kind of film theory stuff you're throwing out there. I don't know that, and I believe that, I mean, it's entirely possible that's all intentional, and that's not just stuff that's being read in. What I will say though is that I think it's a really tough line to walk of commenting on your own film that you're sequelizing, and maybe that's where it feels like an uneasy stew. Because what I get is that, yes, a lot of stuff feels really ham-fisted. And if that's a commentary on ham-fisted sequels, that's fine. But I don't think you can have a smart sequel that is a dumb sequel at the same time. I don't know if those two places can hold the same area.
I think Steven Spielberg would agree, at least in 1997.
I mean, I would argue that it's one of my least favorite Spielberg movies. Like, it's like I was like, this doesn't feel like Spielberg.
By far my least favorite.
I adore it as a horror movie. It's great. Well, the comedy is great. Like, it's got like this comedy element. It feels really modern when you watch it. It feels like it would be more at home in like a multiplex in 2015 rather than 1997.
Well, that's what I mean. It feels like a spoof sequel of Jurassic Park, as opposed to an authentic sequel. that I will say, I mean, I want to just give props to the one sequence that I really do like,
glass.
which is the trailer going over the cliff, and you know, that whole like climbing up business.
It's
and
a little long.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's got its moments.
Well, there's the two vehicle scenes. Like, there's no static shots in these movies like that plagued every dinosaur movie ever, so we could pause for the special effect. Like, the dinosaurs are allowed to be in the frame now with the actors. And so, like, you have that gorgeous, you know, sequence where it's all from characters' point of views in the first movie. And when we copy it for sequel syndrome, we got not one, not two, but 3 T-Rexes. But we do it all from inside a trailer, and we can't see what's happening, and it is so scary to watch that scene.
Like I say, I feel like, and I mean, just watching things slide and watching winches, you know, not do what you want them to do, and watching it pull the. I was like, thank
There's
you.
Real dread there.
Yeah, it felt genuine. It felt like a really well constructed scene. I don't know that I could say as much good about the rest of the film, including the casting, because you know, I don't feel like a lot of these characters work the way I want them to work.
Yeah, I would say, like, the trailer scene, everybody, you know, it's hard not to see how great that is. So it's so good that it wasn't until this time through that I'm like, where do the dinosaurs go?
Right. Why do they go?
The trailer off the side, they're running into it. And then all of a sudden, the trailer's just hanging off, and the dinosaurs are gone. And you're like, where did the dinosaurs
like, it'll fall eventually.
They go back. I thought you read the book. They go back into the tree line.
But I will say that, like, starting with the last 15 minutes of the first Jurassic Park, from then on throughout the series, they get really sketchy about the rules, which for me is somebody who's invested in story, I have a hard time with, because it's like, oh, boom, impact tremor. You see the water, you know, the T-Rex is coming. He makes these thunderous footsteps, and yet suddenly they're like, surprise! I just tiptoed on my giant dinosaur feet and sneak up on everybody.
I get very fussy about that level of world building, which the first movie does so well. They teach you what to expect very slowly and over time, and you just sort of absorb it. And then they just spend 5 movies just breaking it over and over and over again.
I think if you make your every movie like sort of written into a corner by what you did in your first one, you're like really doing like your story a disservice. I feel like the story of each individual is more important. And so, like, for instance, like like you were talking about the footsteps, like they established that, like, we're in their environment now. Like, the idea that they could sneak up on you, like, yeah, it's not something you would have in the first movie, but I can easily buy into it in the second, because we're playing by a different set of rules that are established by each story. And I'm not going to defend every single one of the sequels like I'm defending this one. But I adore this movie. Like, I think this is one of the best blockbuster, like, big budget action franchise movies ever made, and I am waiting for it to have its time in the sun. Like, I think it's a great horror movie. Like, the Comp Signathus sequence with Peter Stormare, where like the guy has his radio on and he's just like and you like see it set up, so you know exactly what's going to happen as he's calling for help, but you don't realize that's what is being set up when he goes off to take a pee. There's so many cool things in this movie, but
we approach that from 2 different places, because I'm like, these are professional hunters who know they're on an island managing dinosaurs. So listening to headphones and going off to pee are 2 extremely stupid things I'm like, once again, going back to Tremors, people get caught and die, but not because they did something stupid. They just didn't know the circumstances had changed. Whereas these are the good, you know, it's the difference between like The Exorcist, which is this evil has come into my house and suddenly I'm caught off guard by it, as opposed to like, oh, look, there's the giant haunted insane asylum. I think I'll go in there for a picnic. Those people I feel differently about those people.
Before we get too far afield, I want to say that's not what I was saying about breaking your own rules. I'm all for breaking the rules of your world if there are consequences to the rules being broken. Like if you do something that we were taught not to do before, you should suffer the consequences of it. It should not just be, oh, this time the Tyrannosaur can't see you when you're moving, because it's not really, we don't want to deal with that right now. Like, you know, they either can see you when you're moving or they can't, and you either know that or you don't. Like, but if you're forced to move when the T-Rex is looking right at you, then there should be consequences.
Speaking of being forced to move, we must lurch forward and talk about our third film in the series.
I'm sorry, I take it back. This is the worst.
Jurassic Park 3: The Quest for Peace.
It's not the worst. I like this movie too.
No, honestly, I'll defend this movie. I'll defend parts of this movie. My biggest issue with it is Téa Leoni.
Yes, my God, she's
like her character is just the worst, and she's left with very little she can do to save it. But
it's demoralizing to watch this movie as
I was like, oh man, you have let's talk about the fact that there's not as a whole lot of white. There's a whole lot of white throughout the first 3 Jurassic Park movies. Like token representation is and a whole lot of white and a whole lot of male. And the fact that like Téa Leoni is our token female, and she's just hysterical, and she just
the megaphone scene. Good God!
Oh man, it brings. It's not, but I think it was meant to be funny, but it's not funny.
It's not.
Please don't let us end without talking about how the first Jurassic Park is a feminist text. We need to talk.
Oh no, I feel like it tries. It definitely makes statements for sure.
The first one.
Yes, the first one. The first
None of the others.
That's right. I mean,
I'm not going to want to argue with that. I think.
I just want to make sure we talk about it.
No.
I go Jurassic Park 3.
I say it starts going, drifting downhill rather quickly.
Oh yeah.
However, so Jurassic Park 3, we have the return of Alan Grant, and he's kind of, he's lied to basically and lured back onto the island. But I feel like it's not great screenwriting in terms of the device used to get him there. But hey, as long as we get Alan Grant back, I'm willing to go along with it, because I feel like he really is the thing that kind of saves this movie, along with our flying, pteranodons. Because I was like, well, when are we going to get those? I mean, we had that. It was completely alluded to at the end of Jurassic Park. Like, that's how they're going to go off the island, is because there's flying dinosaurs. And then we don't really do that, but then we came back around to it. Eli, I see you about to leap through the camera. Yes.
They're not dinosaurs. But
the pteranodons?
They're not. And they also shouldn't have teeth. And they didn't have teeth in the Lost World because their name means winged toothless one. But that's not what I was going to talk about. I was really excited because you were talking about they gave winged toothless one teeth, but they're still great movie monsters. So you were talking about the writing, and the writing for this I love this movie too, but I love this like I love a Corman movie. Like, this movie's bananas. It feels like a low budget movie with a big budget presentation, and it's because it kind of was. They shot it getting pages delivered on the day, because they hired this screenwriter for a story. And there are a couple different stories they had for this. One was like teenagers lost on Isla Sorna who had kind of found their way there, like a slasher movie, which I wish would have got made. But they said, oh, it felt too much like Friends. And then so they had one where like Alan Grant
dinosaurs on Friends.
I don't know. That's literally a quote.
Ross was a paleontologist.
But
that would make a great Friends episode.
They also had several stories that involved Alan Grant either trying to get to Isla Sorna to study raptors and like fund that, or with him sneaking to Isla Sorna and living there by himself, like some kind of like Robinson Crusoe, like lunatic wild man. And none of those things make sense for his character. And so when they were making the movie, it was David Cope that saved it. He was like, look, you guys can't do this. You can't do this. Here's the story. Spielberg liked it, but they'd already invested millions in storyboarding, so they were like, we're gonna keep the action sequences and just make it up as we go along. And that's why it's the best special effects movie ever made, but it feels like a low budget it's so cool. It is such a unique movie. I love this movie.
It certainly feels like Canon Pictures presents.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.
When we were watching this movie and we saw, it became clear that Alan and Ellie were not together anymore. Chris turned to me and he goes, "Did they break up on the helicopter? She already has like 2 kids."
I love that they're not together because I never thought of them as together.
Yeah, I mean,
I wasn't necessarily invested in them being together. But
it's in the script, original script, but like, it doesn't work.
It's in the script. It's in their relationship in the first one, but it's never like they don't go. They are just a couple. It's not like it's not
a love story.
One.
Which is also really cool and unusual about the first one. God,
exactly. That's why once again, going back to the first one being so simple is, nobody's trying to fix any marriages or, trying to rescue the love of their life or, it's just like, we're in the situation is to survive it. And 90% of what's here wants to kill us, like this whole, like, particularly in 3 with like the whole marital woes and the lost kid. I mean, because Taya Leone basically goes, "Oh yeah, I was banging that guy, and he took my kid by a dinosaur,
very irresponsible
and got et." But luckily, it fixed our marriage, and that's the most important thing about this experience is that we are still a fan. That guy, dead. Us, we're good. And then Sam Neill's flippant assistant. I mean, it's sort of like unnecessary beats of like they're at the dig and he's like, "Oh, see, you got to brush it this way or brush it that way." It's like, oh, they're setting up to be some sort of playboy, and now they're not around anybody else. And
I don't mind it. This movie is like it's fine. Like if
it were called something else, like I don't know, Carnosaur, that'd be different.
I like it. I like the Spinosaurus. I like we get a Ceratosaurus. That's really cool. We get some cool dinosaurs. We can't talk about this movie if people who love this movie as much as I do or hate this movie as much as I love this movie are going to be listening without mentioning the talking dinosaur. Someone please talk about the talking dinosaur.
Eli, talk about the talking dinosaur.
I love the talking I love the velociraptors in this movie. That's another thing I like about the Jurassic Park franchise that got abandoned when we get to the world, because Jurassic Park movies are horror movies for children. Jurassic World movies are action movies for people who want nostalgia. They're superhero movies, really. But the velociraptors and like the Alan scene, I love how weirdly surreal it is. I love that it doesn't feel like none of this movie feels like something that would come out in 2001 with the largest budget of like a movie. I don't think it had the largest budget of a movie ever, but like this was like an Avengers of like, it cost so much money to make this movie. For it to be this weird and off the cuff is really exciting. And there are some genuinely exciting horror sequences in this. The sort of river scene with the Spinosaurus, that's great. The aviary scene is like everything everyone who's ever watched a dinosaur movie wanted to see. Like, it's so good. The sort of like the velociraptors baiting each other, and yeah, it's dumb they have their own language, but they establish it in a way that's like believable enough. And I'm not gonna like say the character writing's great, because it's not. They were delivering pages every day, like, surprise, this is what your character is today. But the actors make it work. Tia Leone, I agree, she's annoying, but she still makes it work as like that annoying character,
Yeah, but we don't need that annoying character.
I agree with that, but I'm saying like that's part of the like. This movie.
That was kind of what was great.
I just agree that that's a good performance.
I would also like, you got Julianne Moore, you got Tia Leone, like just delivering career worsts.
Yeah. It's just like there's something just charming about this third movie, because it's so weird, but it's actually a horror movie. It sticks to like the roots of like, for me, what Jurassic Park's about. There's that whole idea of like science. You have your astronomer and your astronaut, and like that whole speech is actually really cool. You get some beautiful ooh ah moments, and then you get to see people ripped apart, which is like what we come to these movies for. But these movies our perception of dinosaurs evolves throughout the movies, and they just kind of accept it as canon up until we get to 4. So like velociraptors, by the time we get to 3, they don't have the lizard pupil of that velociraptor. They have this tiny little they look like bird eyes. They have those ridges on their snout that aren't present back there. They have feathers on their head, those cool mohawks that we decided every dinosaur had to have because we weren't committed to actually feathering our dinosaurs in paleo reconstructions of the time. It's cool. Sorry, I'm talking.
I think I'm realizing something, and that me not liking these movies is really my fault. Like, I think I went to the first one wanting to see dinosaurs ripping people apart, and was really into, like, I wanted to go see the dinosaur horror movie, and it taught me something else that then I wanted to see again, and it never gave them to me.
You know what? It's funny because
I don't go to these movies to watch them for the dinosaurs.
When we referenced Jeff Goldblum, I mean, because it's kind of like The Fly and Fly 2.
Yeah,
I mean,
The Fly, I do love The Fly too, but
The Fly is but it's a different movie. It's a monster movie.
The dog scene. Oh my god!
Yeah, Aliens and Alien. These are sequels that are like, let's take this idea and do something else. Is a great notion.
I would say The Fly 2 is a B movie version of the original's premise, and I feel like that's kind of what we get with Lost World and Jurassic Park 3.
So
is if we get a B movie version of this A-list property, which is essentially a B movie just done really, really, really well.
So
like, it's a high concept.
The Fly 2 work so well for me, but these movies, I'm like,
I don't know, because
the toilet.
I'm getting better.
That's probably my favorite cinematic moments. Is him saying, "I'm getting better," when he's like covered in shit, and I don't know why I love that so much, but. Yeah, like it's There's something about wanting a sequel to differentiate itself in a way that leaves a mark that affects me. But I guess I don't want that with these movies. I want more Jurassic Park.
There is something about in the sequels, because then they trade off Goldblum for Sam Neill. But like, there's particularly a scene in Lost World where it feels like everybody else got a script except for Jeff Goldblum, and he's like, "Wait, this is the fucking premise? Are you kidding me? This is like," he's like literally like, "Oh my, what's happening? Who?" And everybody else is like, "Yeah, we're going to an island full of man-eating dinosaurs that in this case don't even have pages. They're just running around." And he's like, "Is everybody crazy?" And Sam Neill takes that part of like, why are you yelling? There are man-eating dinosaurs, like literally in the tree line. They are on the ground for 30 seconds before 2 people are immediately murdered.
Dude, they hit a dinosaur with a plane. It's awesome.
I mean, it's
the physics. The weight of that whole like plane sequence where it's pulling them out like a sardine can, like, dude, that's so cool.
But like, once again, the children in Jurassic Park make sense. Grandfather, it's an amusement park, brings them there. Jeff Goldblum's daughter in Lost World makes no sense whatsoever. Hey, honey, come down to my top secret base where we're building all this equipment so I can tell you in person that you can't come with me, and I can't, that I'm going away, and I won't wait long enough to actually hand you to leave rather than hand you off to the sitter who's supposed to watch you for the next couple of days. And
she's old enough.
She's like 13, gross 14. Irresponsibility of like, oh yeah, it's like, hey, why don't we go jump into fans? Like, honey, we're gonna go jump into fans. We may die. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye. I'm gonna sit on the beach and read my book. I mean, everybody is just terrible. Like, first one, mistakes happen, choices are made, bad ideas happen.
I really hate these movies.
Just like Hammond goes full villain. He's like, "Oh yes, and I just sent a bunch of people to the island." He's just become a naturalist at that point. There's a joke about it. Like, everyone makes sense in the Lost World until you get to the island, and then it's sort of that deconstruction
Everything
of the
just
first one.
Blows up.
Yeah.
Speaking of blowing up,
if you want to call it B, I'd say B+.
This movie, Jurassic World, from 2015. I'm going to be the one who says, I think this is the best Jurassic Park sequel.
Oh, I think the last one is the best Jurassic Park
Okay,
sequel,
okay.
but that's nostalgia because I loved having the old team back.
Yeah.
With the new
What
team.
I liked seeing a fully realized Jurassic World.
Yeah,
I
that's
liked
pretty
seeing what Jurassic Park was intended to be. And I like the fact that we get to see that it's been working. Like, this is working and this is how it works. And there's the whole exploitation elements and the commercialism and all of that, which again, I feel like is a commentary on blockbusters and, you know, theme parks and just the commercialization of entertainment, you know, eating its own tail. And I really kind of like all of that. And I find Chris Pratt a very appealing. He's a kind of a generic hero, but I find him as an appealing main character to follow. I do not feel the same about Claire, played by Bryce Dallas Howard. I feel like she's really kind of a cardboard villain who is, you know, shown to have, you know, have a change of heart. And I'm like, this is not the person to have running your park if she only plays by the rules of, well, we have to please the, you know, please the shareholders.
I think Owen is only charming, captivating, interesting in comparison to Claire, who's almost as bad as Leone. The third one.
I think it's in, you said blowing up. It tries to do too much. You know, that like the first one is get him to the island, things go wrong, there we go. In this one, it's like, oh, we got to have a will they, won't they? But we have to have a will they, won't they with a cold corporate shark and this guy. But that cold corporate shark also has to be a neglectful aunt. Is that a thing?
Is she neglectful?
She's a bit neglectful.
She's doing her job. She's at
her kids.
You are
right.
And that is the thing that kills me. It's like you are sending your children to an island full of dinosaurs to mask the fact that you and your husband are getting divorced while they are gone. That is the most unconscionable thing that happens in the course of this movie. There's stupidity, whatever, but
there's worse. If it wasn't for the fact that there are dinosaurs, that petting zoo scene, which really hits me in the feels, like directly, like I tear up when I see that petting zoo scene, which is
as in it shouldn't exist.
No, it should. I want to be there. I want to be the little kid hugging the dinosaur.
I'm sure.
And then there's the end when they fight. Like, that's cool. But this was my least favorite for a very long time. I think this is the beginning. This is what I like to call cover band filmmaking. Like, you take, you know, it's like, it's the same as Blade Runner 2049, Star Wars Force Awakens, Star Trek 2009, Halloween 2018. You take the original, you follow the story beats, you make sure all the nostalgia is there, you reference some kind of canon, but you have a hot new young cast that just basically stands in for the old one, but the old cast are now the mentors. It's like the same exact movie. So the formula is super predictable. It's incredibly sexist, which is annoying because it's so enamored with the original movie that it totally misses the entire fact that it's a feminist text with accidental queer subtext, but it is a very feminist text, and it is aggressively sexist with its, you know, Chris Pratt's stupid jokes. The fact that her nephews see her kill a pterosaur with a gun by beating it to death, and are like, we want to go with this action guy that we've literally never met. He does nothing to like win them over. There's the car scene. Like, anyone who knows anything about cars, and that's a normal thing that working class people know that Jeep would not be running. Then there's the dinosaur escape is the one that makes me the maddest, because it's like, oh, we don't see the dinosaur in its cage, so I'm gonna hop in my Mercedes so we can have a car commercial, and I'll make a phone call instead of calling from there. You guys go inside and open the dinosaur-sized door. We're not gonna check the tracking device. Like, sorry, yeah. I really dislike this. And the most likable character in the movie is Simon Masrani, and he dies for no reason.
They kill him for no reason. That's right.
It's yeah. Sorry, I feel bad because you really liked this one, and I've been defending them. This
I didn't
entire
say I
time.
liked it. I said it's,
really
I said
liked
it's the best. I said it's the best sequel.
I disagree. It's one of the worst. I would consider all the sequels up until this point good movies, and this is one I just like because there are dinosaurs in it.
Yeah, I think, like I said about it being too, because you've got the two kids whose parents are getting divorced, they're dealing with that. You've got their aunt who's dealing with her nephews and trying to bring more visitors into the park and creating giant murder monsters for that purpose.
Yep.
Then you have Chris Pratt and Vincent D'Onofrio fighting over training velociraptors for military purposes. It feels like there are 6 movies going on and none of them gets the amount of attention any one of them would do and can do well with it. So it's this weird sort of like, it's like watching 5 different dinosaur movies with somebody who's constantly flipping the channels.
I just want to really quick, I want to throw this banner up there because I feel like the Fallen Kingdom, the one that follows this, has almost the exact opposite problem in that it's too little movie for what there's not enough movie there. And so we just have set piece after set piece after set piece. And it just kind of like, I'm like, okay, so basically the plot is we're getting the embryos and we're going to have a new dinosaur. I was like, where's the rest of this movie? Why is this movie taking so friggin' long to tell that story? Whereas I agree. Jurassic World is massive in scope. Kind of like, Jurassic World itself. I'm like, yeah, it is a sprawling movie, but I like that it has some ideas more than just we're going to sell off dinosaur embryos to a bunch of rich pricks.
I feel like Fallen Kingdom has what I call the Ghostbusters 2 syndrome of like
kind of reset.
So Ghostbusters ends and there's like all of these different threads we could pick up on. And instead, 5 years later, it picks up none of those and sort of introduces like this, oh, well, now instead of a cellist, she's an art restorer. And, it's sort of like, and they broke up and she married somebody else and had a baby. And it's like, what? Yeah. And I feel like the same way about this. It's like suddenly Claire is an environmentalist who cares deeply about the dinosaurs that
congressmen take her calls.
Could barely refer to as animals in the first movie.
I read the novel prequel about Claire because I'm dumb.
Dedicated.
You're doing the Lord's work.
I love this movie. I think this movie is better than Jurassic Park 3, and I love Jurassic Park 3. This one's only sin is that it's following Jurassic World, and that it kept Jurassic World's convention of not updating the dinosaurs with new scientific knowledge. Because
it has far greater sins, Eli. Let me just throw that out there.
I disagree because this movie realized it looked at Jurassic World and was like, oh yeah, all of these people who are going to see a Jurassic Park movie, they don't care about Chris Pratt. They don't care about Bryce Dallas Howard. They care about dinosaurs. And so the entire emotional arc of the movie is centered around dinosaurs and dinosaurs only. The only time they even tug at your heartstrings is when a dinosaur is in peril. This is a movie made by and for dinosaur lovers. Like, if you love a dinosaur, this is
why is there so much people action then?
There are more dinosaurs in this movie than any.
But they don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. You don't get to know these dinosaurs at all. Like, they are just
you get to know Blue. The Brachiosaurus is this. It's a cheap callback.
Actually, okay, yes, you have one good moment, and that's the Brachiosaur on the shore being enveloped by the cloud.
Stiggy Moloch is great. That's a character. He's very silly and like they turn him loose and it's cartoonish, but it's fun. I buy in. I think this movie's really. And then you've got the haunted house, like the big gothic haunted house with the dinosaurs that stand in as ghosts. And then there's like they hint at visually that the fact that the Indoraptor has human in it. And then there's that great moment at the end where the little girl gets to decide. Like, the girl is part monster, the monster is part human, very gothic, very old school, like haunted house movie, which is super weird. Like, we have Jurassic Park, the superhero movie that everyone's demanding in 2016, 2018.
18 was this one.
So 2018, and then the second half we pivot to Jurassic Park through Hammer Horror. Like this movie is dope. It's so cool, and the ending, like I get very emotional at the ending where she's like, they're alive like me. Like that whole thing, it's corny, but it's so good.
No,
No, it is, because if you were standing at that button, if you had the opportunity to like any dinosaur obsessive,
the kid gets a free pass because she's a kid. That's the only reason we don't hate her.
No, I love her. I love her. And she's the best, like one of the best kids in the entire franchise, but she's standing over that button and you know that Claire wants to press that button. She wants to save the dinosaur.
And she doesn't because she's a responsible person.
Yeah, she doesn't because it's an ethical thing. I don't know that I wouldn't press the button. If I had the button that would bring the dinosaurs back right now, massive death would ensue. I might fall to my ego, man. Like I might slam that. I know this about myself thoroughly.
I was not very into this movie when it first started. Chris was like, just be prepared. 75% of it takes place at this fucking house. And I was like, what? And then he'd seen it before and I hadn't. But I will say that in the last few minutes of the movie, I was like, oh, I'm a little excited for the next movie. This is setting up here.
I think this is
pretty
the best.
Cool.
I think this is the
but
best.
I don't think it followed through in the next movie on what
you mean this movie?
Yeah. I was excited for this one a little bit. I already knew Chris had seen it, so he was like, "It's not good. Don't worry about it." But I was excited by the premise. When the movie ended, Chris turned to me and he said, "They don't follow through on any of that. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, no, I was absolutely excited by where this could go. I was like, this is okay. I'm down to see, because yes, I mean, the best thing about Fallen Kingdom is it does get them off that island finally.
Yeah.
And now we're in a world where dinosaurs are running wild in Jurassic World Dominion, and we get Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern back.
So they rescue it for me. They made it watchable for me, that I was excited when they were on screen. I liked the dichotomy of the two groups of people. I loved the pilot. I liked a lot more of this movie. Would watch this movie again if was forced to watch a Jurassic Park sequel.
Yeah.
That was
also Dodson. We got Dodson here. Dodson's here.
Yeah. That was pretty and I thought he was great, and that character was hilarious.
Yes, my joke was that Campbell Scott was upset he never got to play Steve Jobs. No,
exactly.
Here you go.
He's like, damn you, Michael Fassbender.
He just had some really wonderful little reaction shots.
Wow.
And I just really enjoyed him.
Continue with the unpopular opinions of the group, where I really did not. I mean, I liked this movie enough, but like, whereas the last one was all completely only about dinosaurs, this movie, like the dinosaurs could not even be in it and it would play out the exact same way.
Yeah.
Like the characters didn't make sense. Like, yeah, it's great to see Jeff Goldblum and
it's
Laura
a Mission
Dern,
Impossible movie.
but yeah,
it's a globe-trotting Mission Impossible movie.
Saying like this is gonna be the Avengers of Jurassic Park, and it was in literally all the worst ways, like like all the ways you would not want. And then like the giant bugs are like a why.
Oh boy, different movie. Wow.
Yeah,
I want to see the movie about the giant bugs.
I definitely want to see that movie.
I want to see the movie about
in the middle of my Jurassic Park movie.
I want to see the movie about the dinosaur rights activists running all around North America.
How about that movie?
That is covered in dinosaurs, where families. Did you guys see the short film? Did you guys watch the extended cut of this movie?
No.
I've seen both. I watched the extended cut the first time I watched it, but we watched the theatrical release.
He did not
the other night.
Okay, so there's some cool stuff you're missing from the extended cut that kind of delivers on those promises for like a minute. And it's really good. It's the best thing in the movie, and they cut it. And then there's a short film that they released a year before this movie came out that's like 5 minutes long. And it's literally just about a family camping that gets attacked by an Allosaurus. And it's really, really, really good. So like leading into this movie, you were just like, we're about to get the best dinosaur movie ever. And then we don't even get an actual dinosaur movie. Like it's the biggest false promise in movie history, maybe.
Well, I mean, we get a lot of fan service.
Yeah.
I hate fan service.
I also hate fan service, and I just went through this with the Halloween when we were talking about the Halloween films. It's like, you know, these would be worthwhile if you just actually told your own story instead of trying to play both sides of the fence. And I feel like I love that Colin. I'm going to butcher his name because it just flew out of my head. Trevorrow. Yeah, I love that he tried to do something different with his dinosaur premise, in that he tried to make a Mission Impossible movie with dinosaurs. But those scenes of Malta where the raptors are running through the streets, those ought to be awesome. And what they are is they just feel like these kind of commercially created action sequences. And I watched the making of. I'm like, I recognize how much work you guys all put in. It just feels generic, and it shouldn't feel generic. I mean, the thing about, if we go way back to 1993, what feels awesome about those films is that they feel like we are working within limitations. Whereas in 2022, there are no limitations.
Yes,
we can
you need
do
it to be
anything.
snowy. There's snow here. You need it to be a jungle. Just walk for an hour.
Yeah. And I mean, I should have loved watching those raptors tearing through the streets, because I love how they move. I just don't love how they move in 2022 CGI. I was like, what would it have been like had you not been able to do everything you wanted to do?
Well, it's funny because you mentioned the raptors. Like, going back to 1993, they were the unabashed villains of Jurassic Park, right? And basically, they got Freddy Kruegerized over the course of 6 movies. First Nightmare on Elm Street, very scary. By the time you're like in 7 or 8, it's like, oh, nice to meet you, kind of,
I would argue that
and stuff. So they devalue the threat. I mean, because particularly the end of Dominion, spoilers, we're going to talk about the ending of a movie that came out last year. We've been talking about movies all night, but
okay, covered. All right.
But the T-Rex and whatever that giant spiny fingered thing.
It's called Giganotosaurus.
Giganotosaurus.
Is it a real thing?
Or Giganotosaurus.
Oh, wait.
It is real.
This guy with the big spiky Freddy Krueger hands.
Freddy Krueger hands.
No, that's Therizinosaurus. Sorry, the Freddy Krueger hands dinosaur was the best thing in the movie because it was.
But it's not real, right?
It is real. It's feathered.
Okay.
It's not carnivorous, but it's a blind samurai dinosaur. Sorry.
Yeah, but him and the T-Rex joining forces to vanquish the dinosaur, and then being like,
awesome.
We're cool, right? We'll just go our separate ways. That's I'm like,
I love
because that's how apex predators work.
But that's the problem with the Jurassic World movies. You hit the nail on the head with the Freddy Krueger eyes, but it's worse than that, because the Jurassic World movies turn the dinosaurs into their superheroes, and they give us Chris Pratt as our kind of Iron Man to pull it all together, and it doesn't work. They are superheroes now. They are no longer movie monsters. They are action. I mean, every time the T-Rex shows up, she's saving someone.
Yep.
Every time the Raptors show up, aside from that first Jurassic World movie where we have a moment where they might be bad guys, they're saving people. And so when the blind samurai Therizinosaurus that feels through everything with its claws as its cane, I thought that was a really cool characterization, but also this is no longer a horror movie. These are action movies for people who want nostalgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I completely agree, I guess is what I'm saying.
No,
but I love Therizinosaurus. It's one of my favorite dinosaurs. It would probably be much fatter than that in real life, pot-bellied. It would not have eaten meat. It's got salad tongs for hands.
If this movie would have taken 5 seconds for somebody somewhere to be like, that's what that monster is.
Yeah, they don't even name it.
It just shows up, and you're like, what the fuck is that?
That's a real dinosaur. It's a really weird dinosaur. Have you guys been watching that Prehistoric Planet at all?
No.
There's a really cool sequence with a Therizinosaurus in that, and you guys should watch that because it's
where is
David.
Where can we watch Prehistoric
Apple
Planet?
TV. It's David Attenborough.
We just finished the morning
brother.
show.
And he's narrating, and it's Jon Favreau's dinosaur walking with dinosaurs ripoff. So it's just cool. They drop a camera in the Cretaceous, and it's gorgeous. It's the coolest, and so Jurassic Park updated the public's perception of dinosaurs, and nothing else has done that until this show, and I'm sad because it's on Apple TV, so no one's watching it. But
well, it's funny because once again, breaking the story rules of okay, at the end of Fallen Kingdom, they say that all throughout Fallen Kingdom, they're Ted Levine and his crew are we've got 11 species of dinosaurs. that were getting off the island. And yes, they have the embryos, but then the little girl sets them free at the end of Fallen Kingdom.
Yep.
She doesn't set a bunch of embryos free. She doesn't clone a bunch of dinosaurs. She just sets a bunch of
pre-existing
dinosaurs in basically Seattle. And somehow these 11 species of dinosaurs populate the world in 4 years. And I can count more than 11 species of dinosaurs that were in this movie. So it's sort of like, well, what is it?
I would be fine with that stupidity if they at least delivered on the dinosaurs are loose. I don't care if they magically created new dinosaurs by breeding with each other. I don't care. I literally don't care. Just give me a dinosaur tearing
How about
down
just don't say there are only 11? Just cut that line.
But once again, after, like you said, getting them off the island, at least at the end of Fallen Kingdom, they're off the island. For them to be like, okay, now we're doing this globe-trotting thing. There's literally no reason for them to go to Malta.
Nope.
Nothing happens in Malta. It's like we have to go to Malta because that's where they're taking the girl and the dinosaur. But the girl and the dinosaur just then go on to Italy. There's no
Malta's
reason
Malta's like a way station.
Yeah, it's like there's no direct flights to the giant dinosaur sanctuary because they get one from Pennsylvania to fucking Italy. Why can't they just go straight there with the girl and the dinosaur? But they don't. So now we're in Malta. They have these chases and all of these. It's literally filling time. It's literally filling time for the two different movies to come together. Because I said this when Katie and I were watching it, when the flaming locusts explode from the lab and Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, I'm like, they have no idea what's going on. It's just why are there flaming locusts in my dinosaur?
It was a beautiful shot, though. Yeah. That was really stunning.
Nothing makes sense in that movie. Why? Can anyone tell me why Sam Neill even needed to be there? Laura Dern has apparently switched careers from paleobotanist, which is someone who studies plants, to a bioengineering genius who works with the government, who has somehow not been poisoned by all the money that goes into government, which is a really idealistic view of how any sort of regulatory agency works. And so she goes to get Sam Neill to go look at bugs when dinosaurs are running around everywhere.
He has to be there because he was in the first movie.
It doesn't.
That's right.
Then Jeff Goldblum's whole nihilist philosophy about we're all gonna kill the world anyway. Okay, relatable, dude. But why is that other dude there? Who also it's so overstuffed with people to just be there, and none of them get eaten.
To take some of Ian Malcolm's lines because Jeff Goldblum didn't want to be on set every day.
I just want them all to get eaten. If it was a pandemic thing and they were like, oh, our movie got messed up at the last, they should have just filmed a half an hour of dinosaurs eating everybody in the movie and left us with a couple, and I'd be like, okay, this is fine.
I would have been okay with that as well. Oh my goodness, folks, we made it. Thank you.
Wait, are we done?
We're
those
going
are all
to.
There isn't a seventh movie, is there?
There's a cartoon series.
There is a cartoon series. Which I didn't realize until I started looking for this.
My wife and I watched the entire first season, stoned in one go, and it was fun. If you imagine everyone died in the first episode.
It's on Netflix.
Last year or two.
It's in the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's like kids get stuck on Jurassic World and then get left there when it gets destroyed.
Something in the Cretaceous,
and it just gets dumber and dumber every season.
Just watch the old Land of the Lost.
There's an adorable lesbian romance in it, but
but now according to canon, all those children are dead because that island erupted in a volcano.
Well, no, they got off that island and ended up on another island with sci-fi shit,
which is only 65 miles away from Costa Rica.
Dude, the cartoon. I watched 4 seasons of it, which is about 4 more than I should have.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I think it's 5.
It's sweeping. 5. Yeah, check out.
Consider this: that even if the Indominus Rex hadn't gotten loose and caused the downfall of Jurassic World, 4 years later, it would have been destroyed by a natural disaster. Anyway.
I think if Fallen Kingdom would have picked up with Jurassic Park is in disarray, like, you know, there is no Jurassic World. It's just like Bryce Dallas Howard is a dinosaur rights activist working to save the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. And then we could have introduced this like other dude to like, you know, have trained the like I would have bought it. And I think Fallen Kingdom's a great movie. And I also think the Indominus Rex idea of it being a weapon never makes sense. In Fallen Kingdom, they give it a visual cue with that gun,
Right.
and like it's small. You know, you can't see it in the dark. It's bulletproof. Like all of those questions of how is this going to be a weapon are answered visually. I think, man, Fallen Kingdom is so unfairly hated on. It's so good.
I prefer it to
really
Jurassic World
it.
just because of the batshit crazy. I sort of
that opening sequence with the Moses, which by the way, guys, mosasaurs aren't the size of Showa Godzilla. They're quite small. Actually, just a second. Give me 2 seconds. I'll show you a tooth of one.
Oh, good. I do like that scene in Jurassic World, though.
Yeah, and the great thing about that scene, though, is
there we go.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's a mosasaurus tooth, everybody.
Like if I'm on an island that I know is populated with man-eating dinosaurs, and I look to a helicopter and everybody's going, I'm not gonna be like, what's going on? I'm just gonna assume there's a dinosaur about to eat me and run towards the helicopter.
I wanted him to die. I didn't care. I thought it was awesome. Well, that scene got me like giddy like a kid. The like T-Rex coming and like you only see it in the flashes of light and like
I think once again is a great sequence. And when that thing comes up and snaps him off the
ladder,
we were giggling and laughing.
Yeah,
we did enjoy that. You know,
I saw that movie like 7 times in the theater.
Oh wow!
Like every time I got,
you were the one.
Yeah,
I was it. Like everyone hate. Like I remember, I was the
no one else
like,
there. They were just giving tickets away. Actually, you didn't have to pay.
Jurassic World is bad, and everyone was mad at me and was like, "No, you're bad." And I'm like, probably.
These last 3 movies were the movies that were like, if I was busy doing something, Chris would be like, "Do you care if I go see the Jurassic World movie without you?" And I'd be like, "Nope."
But you know, like once again, going back to the kids, like that was my using crappy kids. Like they tell the clone girl, "Don't go outside, you're gonna get kidnapped," and she's like, "I'm gonna go outside." Immediately gets kidnapped. It's sort of like I'm like, that's a life lesson. Let her go.
Every single you're right. All 5 of the sequels have kids who do what they shouldn't do. And I mean, I for one just was like, oh man, I'm so sick of that, using that trope throughout. It's like, really, do we have to have the kids in danger? Can't we just have, I mean, everybody who's
not enough danger.
Everybody who was a kid watching this is already an adult now. You know, it's like,
see, that's the funny thing though. It's like if you have a post-apocalyptic movie with a bunch of kids, they all act like responsible adults and work together as a team to solve problems. If you have one kid and a bunch of adults, that kid is a moron who will basically trap themselves and be like, what did I do? You know, it's a horrible storytelling trope that I'm really sick of.
Guys, can we talk about the paleontology? Because we didn't touch on that at all.
We got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. Velociraptor only is 6 foot tall in the movie because Michael Crichton was looking at Greg Paul, who is a paleo artist and paleontologist. His book, Predatory Dinosaurs of America. And at that time, he had reclassified Deinonychus or Deinonychus. I'm not sure how you actually pronounce that because I don't think I've ever heard it out loud. He reclassified this much larger raptor as a velociraptor. Velociraptor was only the size of a small dog. So like that's really fun. In the first movie, Dr. Grant mentions he's looking at the screen and he's like, look at the pubic bone face backwards just like a bird. That's a lie. Velociraptor's pubic bone face forward like a lizard. There's 2 main groups of dinosaurs like Ornithischia and Saurischia. And Velociraptor did not have bird hips. They had lizard hips. And then I love, like, I dig in that same town that they dig in. If you look at the scene where like they shoot the shotgun shell into the ground, the guy is wearing a t-shirt from the motel that we stay at, which is really fun when we're out there. So like when you go out there, first up, you don't find Velociraptor because its name is Velociraptor mongolis because it's found in Asia. So you would not find Velociraptor out there
in Montana.
You would not be able to just sweep the dust off of it, or like it's a very difficult process. Like, just sweeping dust off a fully articulated skeleton is probably the most offensive thing in all of the Jurassic Park movies, because it's just not how it happens.
I do want to make a quick recommendation for anyone who hasn't read the book but is interested. It's a great place to find out what's going on with is it the Triceratops? Ellie stops.
The lysine contingency, or
it's
a stegosaurus in the
the
book.
ivy, what's going on with them. That's a really interesting thing that you find out in the book that they never get to tell you in the movie because it doesn't matter. But it's a stegosaurus. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Read the book for that.
Yeah, there's that. There's also
the West Indian ivy in the rocks. Yeah,
the explanation on why the velociraptors are so actively hostile is partially because, like, they talk about how when you clone an animal, you don't clone the animal's extinct. And so if you don't have like that long succession of like passed down behavior, you have a totally new animal. And so without having that, these things are like totally lost, and they have this like anarchic, like hostile, violent culture because of that, which is super cool. The books are fun. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I literally, this is one of my favorite things to do, is just hang out with folks and take big bites of grand buffets. Thank you all so much for coming on the show. We will be doing other things down the road. They may not be dino specific, but they will be awesome. So until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.